This is just one of the biggest scandals I've seen for a long time when you're looking at stats and facts and figures, because I think you've shown the household income numbers there. You can actually go into them in a bit more detail, actually, Mark, and I've just done that for you. And what you can do is look at look at it in terms of the percentage of households and look at the bottom 20% of households. So if you look at what they spend their money on at the moment and what the income that they've got about £1,300 spare at the end of the year. When you look in terms of the bottom 20% of households, that's nearly 6 million households, Mark. Now, the bills are going to go up nearly 3,000, as you just shown on that graphic. So there's absolutely no way these 6 million households are going to afford these new bills. And why are we at where we are now, Mark? Well, as the chart you just put up showed, is that back in the midst of time, you say when Bananarama was smashing the charts, we had very good domestic supply of energy. Most of the the resources that was there to produce all the electricity came from within the United Kingdom, and then successively over time, as part of this green agenda has taken over, we've seen the amount of coal come down, and we didn't use hardly any gas at all. So, it was literally less than 1% back in 1986 on that chart. There was no gas used to make electric. And people actually look at me when I say that, why do we use gas to make electric? Because I thought I used gas to actually, cook the dinner. So now we're using 40% of gas, but over the last 2 decades, Mark, more and more of that gas has been coming from abroad because we've been incentivizing the North Sea producers to reduce the amount of gas they give us for all the the CO2 reasons. So we've been sleepwalking our way into this big disaster that's coming. And this is the Labour government, the Tory government, the Lib Dems as part of the coalition. They're all complicit in this complete shambles that we've had over the last 30 years with our energy security in this country, Mark.
So the green agenda, I mean, I'm generalizing very roughly here, but the green agenda is basically to transfer energy production to countries that don't give a stuff about the green agenda.
Well, in part, yes, Mark, because you look at the CO2 emissions, we can have a separate discussion around the whole climate debate another time. But if you just look at CO2 emissions, you can see that the UK emits about 1% of the UK's world CO2 emissions. We've got about 1% of the population. We're in line with our fair share, you could say. Now, China, on the other hand, they've gone from 5% of the CO2 emissions in 1985, back when that chart started, around there. They're now 30%, and they've increased the amount of coal to produce energy by 2,000% over the last 30 or so years. And they've just announced they're going to have 300 more coal-powered fire stations to try, so they're not going to have any worries about energy this winter. Whilst we're all panicking, we may as well get the candles back out because they're not giving it, two hoots in terms of where they get their energy from. So, that's the big problem we've got here, Mark, is that the UK's trying to do its bit, is what the government would say. But other countries, not just China, you've got India as well, they're not taking any care. We had COP26 last year. We've got COP27 coming up soon, Mark. It'll be more of the same. People are talking about it, but I think the real cost now of this green policy, there's no harm in looking for green energy, but you've got to get your energy security right first, then the green agenda second. But the real cost is now coming home to roost this winter, and I think people are going to start waking up.
Well, when you talk about those people in the bottom 20% who have 1,500 quid left for this when they paid for everything else, and you've got projections that the price cap is going to go up by £3,000, how are people meant to square the circle on this?
Well, they're not, Mark, are they? That is in part where the government will have to step in. We shouldn't be in a situation where the government needs to bail out. And what was interesting, Mark, is that when Rishi Sunak announced that he was going to start putting some money towards our bills a few months back, when he made that big announcement in Parliament, the energy price cap suddenly went up. So if you're an energy company and the government's saying, well, we'll pay some money towards your energy bills, well, you may as well sit in your boardroom and think, oh, let's put the energy prices up a little bit more. And just remember, this isn't the energy suppliers who are doing this. This is all coming from the wholesale side. So this is people who are extracting all of this stuff. It's not costing any more to do that. People will say it's all down to the Ukraine war. A big part of this is, Mark, the fact that over successive years now, we're getting more and more demand on gas from other countries who are trying to reduce their CO2 emissions. And there's more and more countries fighting for the same amount of gas. The UK, there's been talk in the Tory leadership election about fracking. We've got to get our own domestic supply in order. Otherwise, these energy prices are not coming down for a long time to come, I don't think.
Well, if that's true, then a lot of the things they're promising, you're taking VAT off or taking the green energy tax that they put on it. This just is going to knock a couple of £100 off it, and you're still going to have a £4,000 bill. So it's not going to do. I mean, this would be the sort of thing that if there was still any turbulence left in England, to use George Orwell's phrase, that this would be provoking revolution. I mean, it's not good for social tranquility, is it?
Indeed, Mark. I think that's what we're going to start seeing this winter. You're right. If you take the VAT and the green levies off, that will have helped. But that should have been done a long time ago. You know, we had Brexit. They said you can get rid of the VAT on domestic fuel. That hasn't happened. The green levies, well, we shouldn't be needing that at the moment as well. And remember now, Mark, that if you look at the current drivers of inflation, about 2/3 of that is coming from these energy costs, the oil costs going up with our transport, and food costs as well. Now, oil prices are coming back down a bit, which will help a bit. But when people talk about getting the next Prime Minister getting a hold of inflation, well, inflation, Mark, when we get to October, is going to go through the roof again, because when these bills land, they'll be going into the kind of ONS stats compared to a year earlier, and they're going to be astronomical compared to what they were. So inflation's not coming down for a while now, and people are concerned about the current level of inflation. So I just think, you know, we've got to stand up and question what has gone on there. We have no energy security policy properly. Right. There was one in 2014, which Ed Davey kind of oversaw when he was in the coalition as part of the Lib Dems with the Tories. Nothing really in there of any substance. Boris was talking about their energy security policy. And remember, Mark, this isn't going to go away overnight. We can't just magic all of this gas overnight over in the UK. We're going to have to be a long-term solution. The government has to work long-term, Mark. They're just working on 5-year terms, and they need to start looking at the long-term, just like the NHS is in crisis as well.